go ahead and open that up. We're going to be using it throughout today. And if you need any help getting the chat set up, just let us know and we can kind of point you in the direction of that. But we would like you to share your name. You can share pronouns if you would like, the indigenous land that you reside on. And then we hope to get a feel for how familiar you are with Project Drawdown and the Climate ActionKit. And so we will use a ranking system of seedling, sapling, middle-aged, and old growth. So you can drop that information in the chat to just let us know where you're at on your journey with the Climate Action Kit and specifically Project Drawdown. And just a note that we are recording this webinar today. So if you don't want to be featured in that recording, you can turn your camera off, but it's just a personal preference. And maybe while folks are dropping that information into the chat, Satchel, would you like to give our land acknowledgement before we hop too deep in?
Yeah, of course. We just want to ground us today as we're thinking about how we can take climate action and find solutions to take better care of our landscape and our communities, and thinking about the history of the landscapes we live on and all the peoples that have stewarded and taken care of this land in the past. So we'd like to acknowledge and honor the local indigenous tribes. I personally am here in Homer, Alaska, so that's Dena'ina land. And we want to just reflect on those people and everything that they have worked to protect this land over the last millennia, and work together with those people as we move forward, taking care of this land that we all share now.
Great, thank you. And we've got some information rolling into the chat, and one additional housekeeping thing. We would like today to be useful and interactive for you. So we encourage you to grab a piece of paper or maybe open up a blank document on your device just to take some notes as we move through this presentation today. All right.
Hey, Homer. Yeah, it's cool. It's nice to all be together. Forgive me while we were just on the Climate Action Kit for everyone who can see the screen. Ben and I are zooming in. We've been in each other's bubble for a while and we're both vaccinated. So we're here today from the Lofty Ideas Loft at the the Cook and the Keeper Community Action Studio in Soldotna. And we are really excited to share the Climate Action Kit that we've made for you with love. And it's here on our website and Cook and the Keeper's website. And so please, I'll drop it in the chat. It's just inletkeeper.org/action kit. And we've got a landing page and a lot of great information, but I'm going to kick things off today by going straight to the video series. And we've got a really fun, short animated video to share with you. And we'll do that right now to get things started.
Hi, I'm Sue Mauger, Scientist and Executive Director at Cook and the Keeper. Through decades of fieldwork, we've documented rising stream temperatures in the Cook Inlet watershed due to global climate change. In 2019, the hottest summer Alaska has ever had, we measured water temperatures lethal to salmon. 2019 was also the year Cook Inletkeeper joined with community members to address climate change in a new way, by seeing it not as an inevitable catastrophe, but a solvable problem. To do this, we used Project Drawdown, an analysis of the 100 most effective solutions to reverse global warming. But we had to find our own way from their global scale model to a project that fit our region. Neighbor to neighbor, we'd like to share what we've learned in an action kit for small groups of people working together on real projects. Let's roll up our sleeves wherever we live and lead change in our communities. To learn more and to download the action kit, please visit our website.
Awesome. Taylor, I'll kick it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that video and a little walkthrough of the website. It looks like we've got a good mix of folks with different levels of familiarity with the Action Kit and Project Drawdown. So we're excited to tell you a little bit more about it. And I'm actually going to, well, I'll introduce myself. I'm Taylor. I'm the Communications Director with Cook Inletkeeper, and I'm newish to the Action Kit and just really excited to be sharing with the panel today to help everybody learn a little bit more about what it is. And I will kick it back to the panelists to introduce themselves and how they have been involved in this work.
I can jump in first. My name is Satchel Pondolfino. I am the community organizer for Cook Inletkeeper down in Homer, and I have been involved in the Homer Drawdown project since its inception. I've been part of a steering committee with other volunteers and organizations who were excited to collaborate to bring local solutions or to empower local community to enact local solutions here in Homer.
I can go. I'm Kim McNett, and down here in Homer with Satchel, and was involved with the community process, drawdown process, as a participant. And then when we moved on to our action project, I became more involved as an organizer and facilitator.
I'm up here in Soldat.
I unmuted you right after you said your name.
Okay, well, I'm Ben Boettger. I'm a volunteer organizer with Kaitlin up here in Soldana, and I helped work on our drawdown gathering that we had here.
Yeah, and I'm Kaitlin Vadla. I'm the regional director of the Cook Inletkeeper Community Action Studio here in Soldotna, and this has been an amazing journey over the past 2.5, 3 years since its inception to where we're at now, dreaming up this idea, having wonderful actions and community energy come together, and then get real solutions implemented in our community, and then entering into a pandemic, and then Ben wrote the action kit content, and I've worked with a lot of different artists and a small team to build this action kit, and I'm really proud of it, and I also know that it can be better. So I'm really excited to hear from everyone on the call today about how we can use this tool and work together across Alaska to implement local climate actions.
Awesome. Yeah, so we do have a good mix of folks, so we want to make sure that everybody has enough information as a starting point. So if you have never heard of the Action Kit or you're just very briefly familiar with it, we want to dive a little bit deeper so that you have the information for today. So Kaitlin and Ben, would you like to kick it off with gather and reframe?
Yeah, I'll dive right in. This is the action kit. If you can see our screen, it's right now it's online. You can also print it off as a PDF, and it's housed on our Cook Inletkeeper website at inletkeeper.org/action kit. And it's short and there's lots of pretty pictures, but there's also some really great content in there. So I'm scrolling through it here, and really what this action kit is aimed to do is to guide communities through a process of robust dialogue, and then to choose a local climate solution that is achievable by volunteer effort, that can reach significant milestones within a year, that will have an impact on the community's greenhouse gas emissions, and that is doable in your community, that fits your local realities. So this is the contents. This is like what's in there. There's 4 main sections, and we're just going to briefly run through them today. There's a reframe section to reframe people's thinking. There's a gather section about how to gather your community strategically. There's a section called choose your solution with some great rubrics and criteria. And then a section about acting on your ideas and implementing your first solution. So I'll kick it right after we go through the timeline to climate action. This is just a snapshot of our process that we went through in Soldotna and in Homer. And we started up here in the first couple months reframing our thinking, and then gathering people together, gathering a steering committee together, having a kickoff meeting, and then, getting a discussion meeting going that followed the book Drawdown through its chapters. So it was a robust and long process, but it really helped our community get to a place where we had brainstormed a lot of solutions, then chose one, and then started implementing that solution. So you can see it's about a 1.5 year process if you want to do it the way that we did it. And I'm gonna stop talking and kick it over to my friend, Ben.
Well, the roots of this project really started in late 2018. And as people who are concerned about climate, I'm sure you all remember what a weird discordant time late 2018 was. This was when the IPCC, the UN panel, just released its report in October that year, which was a huge statement from the world scientists that we had about 12 years to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And the way all the reporting about this report went was that we had a dozen years to achieve this, and it wasn't really clear at that point, like who this we that was supposed to take responsibility for this huge task was, because at around the same time, you all remember, the U.S. had withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement, and the Paris Agreement itself, again, you all know, is far from adequate to do this huge job, and so it was a very discordant time. It was kind of a peak of urgency, and at the same time a peak of apathy from all the world's most powerful institutions. And so I'd been reading a lot about climate change, and I've been doing it alone. I'd been sort of reading book after book and getting more and more anxious about it. And it occurred to me that all this reading I was doing wasn't really doing anything. It was just sort of working me up and making me angry alone in my little apartment. So I had this idea of a book club, and the first book that we wanted to use was Drawdown, which was fairly newish at the time. It was around the time that I first saw it. And for those of you who aren't too familiar with Drawdown, it's a project from the environmentalist Paul Hawken, who convened a group of scientists to sort of make a big list of the 100 most effective things that can take carbon out of the atmosphere and confront the climate problem. And most of these things are things that already exist. They're technologies that are emerging, or some of them are already quite mature, and some of them are actually land use practices that are very ancient and all very well understood. And in the conclusion he sort of drew from all these people who gathered this information and ran all the numbers was that the means to reverse climate change really existed, and the problem was really a social problem of putting these things out into the world at the scale that they needed to be. So I was pretty excited about this book, and I talked with Kaitlin at Inletkeeper about this book club idea, and she had actually thought of something similar, and there were other people at the same time too. We found out who had been having very similar ideas. A woman who runs a local bookstore, Peggy Mullen, had just got a big shipment of Drawdown, and she was very gung ho about it, and wanted to distribute it to all our local leaders. And so we sort of hashed out what we called at the time a book to action project, where we would sort of gather a bunch of people, something along the lines of a book club, and our book would be Drawdown, but the key thing is that it would lead to action. It would lead to a project that we could implement within a year in our community that sort of existed within the context of our community's politics, its economy, its ecology, the environments around it, and so that's how we sort of reframed our thinking. We sort of realized that the climate was something that could be confronted on a local scale, and something that was within our community's reach. Not really the global climate, but we didn't really have to sort of be passengers on the climate bus to heck. So here's Kaitlin to tell you more about the gathering.
Yeah, this really changed everything for us. This reframing using Drawdown, it helped us see climate change not as this inevitable catastrophe, but as like a solvable problem, like a math problem, literally, that we can crunch the numbers and we can get to a solution, not even just a less bad place, but a better place. And that was the reframing of it. Literally changed our community members' brains. We had one guy come in from he was the executive director of the food bank, and he said, I've always cared about this stuff, but never actually felt like I could do anything. And coming to your meetings has turned me into this like passionate action taker. And he's like this very quiet guy from the Midwest, and he's very religious, and he's just always so pleasant to be around, but he was really, really deeply depressed about this issue of climate change. And coming to our meetings changed everything for him. And it certainly did for me. And so when I'm scrolling now through the action kit, and I won't take too much time here, but when we gathered our community, we strategically invited leaders like him and folks from our municipal bodies and from like city staff, who we knew like some of them weren't concerned about climate change, but they had a lot of power in some of the categories that are most affected by climate change, such as transportation and food and land use. And so we would invite these decision makers to our meetings in a room full of people who are passionate about climate action. And they saw how amazing it could be when folks came together to implement local action, regardless of why they'd come to the table. And Satchel was saying too, that when these meetings were very robust, people would come together and we facilitated them in a way that everybody's ideas were heard and everybody paired up and brainstormed. So there was a lot of connections happening in these meetings. And Satchel described it as because it's so organic and obviously a community generated energy, that a lot of other groups and nonprofits sort of came to this like moths to a flame. They're like, oh my gosh, we want to be a part of this. We have some funding or we have some capacity and we want to be part of this process. So it's really valuable. And I think a lot of the value came in planning and preparing for these meetings, getting a good steering committee together, advertising. We've got a lot of hot tips in here put together by a lot of amazing facilitators from all over the place. And you know, we have a great kickoff meeting walkthrough in here. But yeah, there's, it would be amazing to see this process. It was so beneficial for us to see it happen across the state. So I'm gonna kick it off to Satchel.
Yeah, actually, before you kick it off to me, do you want to talk a little bit more in detail about like what each meeting looks like and the process of discussing the solutions?
For sure. Yeah, as I'm scrolling through, I'm seeing right here. Maybe you can help me. But each meeting focused on a different topic area of the book Drawdown. Like I said, land use solutions. And so we would invite folks from the borough planning department. And then with the food solution, we would invite folks from different food sectors, and we would situate folks, give them the lay of the land and the history, so that we could brainstorm better, more relevant solutions as a community. And then we would break into small groups, brainstorm solutions that would work in our area, and then do a report back to the whole group. And so what we ended up with each meeting was sometimes, you know, 20 to 50 excellent solutions on that topic. And so after 7 months, we had hundreds of really good solutions that we could pick from. And there's some info in the action kit about the dot voting that we use, some facilitation methods that we use to really have it be a robust process. And Satchel had to do all of it.
Yeah, so the first sort of drawdown group was launched in Soldotna in 2018, and they had the what I now know as a luxury of being able to meet in person and you know, have this whole room full of energy. But when Homer Drawdown launched, we launched February 2020. So we had one meeting with a lot of energy and excitement in a room. And then after that, everything has been moved to the virtual world. And, you know, it was like everyone, we adapted to it and we found a way to make it work. But it was a great lesson in learning, like, there's many ways to implement this program. And yeah, some people find the virtual world an easier way to get more people engaged. And that'll be a decision you guys make in your own communities if you do decide to take this on. Yeah, so we went through this 6 or 7 month process of going through each chapter of Project Drawdown and inviting experts that are local experts that work in the field the chapter was covering. And at the end of each meeting, we have generated a list of solutions and we voted on our top 3 solutions within that sector. And so at the end of the 6 or 7 months, we have a list of, you know, 24 plus exciting solutions that our whole group has sort of bought into, and we've done a little bit of talking around to know it's something that could really work in our community. And so after that time period, there's a lot of anticipation and excitement, and we're really ready to get to this implementation phase. And so you reach the point where you need to make a decision, and there's, you know, don't be fooled, don't rush into this. Everyone wants to just jump into doing things, but the decision-making process itself is really important to be sort of thorough and coming to group decisions about how you're going to make that decision, because you're going to have a lot of really good ideas, and there's going to be like little niches of people in your groups that are passionate about specific things. But yeah, making the decision, you really want to harness the energy so that you have enough capacity to implement one solution in the following year. So you want to make sure you choose something that everyone can get behind. And there's a couple things we learned to help you do that. We created a rubric that really helps us think about what solutions will be achievable and successful. And so some of the criteria that we've used are, is this solution going to be politically feasible to implement? Is the solution going to be visible and start conversations across the wider community and have this ripple out effect? Is the solution going to be long lasting and self-sustaining, or is this something you're going to have to like continue to do year after year with a lot of capacity? Is the solution going to excite the people involved who are implementing it? Is the solution visible and will help the community talk about climate change? Is the solution measurable? Will it actually reduce carbon in the atmosphere? And does the solution provide ample roles for a lot of different skill sets to help implement the project? So those were the main things that we discussed. And you can see there's some that we had weighted. And even like between the Soldotna group and the Homer group, we weighted these a little differently. That's what I mean by you need to communicate with your drawdown community and see what is most important to you in making these decisions. And the way that we did this is we started by as a steering committee, creating a list of 10 rather than 24. So I think we sent out a survey, and we used that survey to guide our thinking in getting our top 10. And we made some executive decisions as a steering committee, but did get guidance from the bigger group. And we wanted to make sure there was a good representation from all the different sectors in the solutions book. And after we've reached top 10, we assembled our champions. So those were the folks that studied each solution and really gathered enough information to give our whole community an idea of what implementing that solution could look like, and what would be some of the like strengths of that solution and what would be some potential barriers in implementing that solution. And then we have a big like presentation meeting where all the champions present their solutions and kind of give their pitch, and folks vote on the solution they're most excited about. And we definitely did a round 1 voting, round 2 voting to get, really narrow it down. And we learned a lot of lessons through this process, which maybe I won't go super into right now, but like I said, it's something that you really want to make sure that you're taking a lot of time and care, and it might even be something that you stretch out between 2 months rather than 1 month in deciding your solution.
Yeah.
But it's okay. So we want to talk about what you do after you chose your solution, and I'm going to pass it to Kim, who can kind of use the Homer drawdown solution process as a case study in how we've been moving forward implementing the solution we chose.
Sure, thanks, Satchel. Yeah, and I just want to thank everybody who's put work into this action kit, because this is like a novel idea, right? And people have been using their best of their ability strategy to move these things forward. So there's a lot of lessons learned, and having a rubric to go forward is super awesome. So I think Satchel touched on a lot of what kind of criteria go into an effective project, and I love that the SMARTY acronym. So it's specific, like there is an actual goal you are achieving rather than pursuing just an idea or a concept. And this is going to be really dependent on your capacity as a community. So that's how who is involved and what is their background. What are their interests? How many volunteers do you have? So I think it's really important to make sure that you have a very clear goal, and that goal is measurable. There is a direct avenue for drawdown within that, and balancing ambition with achievable is really important, because you may have a whole lot of inspiration and enthusiasm and ideas, but when it comes time to put the rubber to the road, it is work and it takes time. So sometimes, depending on what you have, you might choose something, a smaller, simpler goal. Our community chose a land use issue surrounding peatlands, which was a bit of an abstract concept. But we also have a whole diversity of expertise and a huge volunteer engagement. So I think that that type of project fit well with our community. That relates to being, the realistic. So working within your reach, something that is attainable. Things are usually more complex than you expect them to be. Go figure. Having something be time bound, discussing this 1 year time frame is great because a lot of these changes will happen slowly and over a long period of time, but at least if you have, I feel like, milestones or areas, places that you can achieve within a short turnaround, that's really gratifying for a volunteer effort. And it sort of bakes that into the whole plan that you will reach this attainable goal within a period of time that you're not going to reach burnout. And at which point reevaluate and continue or start a new project or move on. So I think it's important that you make sure that you can start achieving results relatively soon. And then this is a big one too, is equity. So think about who is going to be impacted, who's going to be involved in the project, and that it's an empowering project for those who are involved. I think that, recognizing everybody at the table for their abilities and what they want to contribute and what they have to contribute, so that you aren't alienating groups. You're making this an opportunity for your community to engage and participate. So getting it going can be a little tricky because you've gone through all these amazing chapters, you've invited these experts, you've learned a lot, you've brainstormed a lot, and now it's time to, take action. So using the meeting platform is really great, and organizing this in a way that, you're bringing new information to the table, you're strategizing what steps need to come next. The informing yourself process is perpetual. You'll always be trying to seek new information and new, insights or strategies or science or expertise. So continuing to bring on guest presenters or people who want to share or bring to the table. And at least for our project, we've kind of reached beyond the usual sphere of people who would be thinking about peatlands. So, as a local resource here, we have we have some great scientific-based organizations that have peatlands on their mind, but we chose to really branch out and start involving, city, small local governance, city planners, people who put land into trusts, and artistic institutions and educational institutions, and bring these people to the table to share their insights and how it might apply to our project. So kind of bringing these topics, like, thinking outside the box with regards to these topics. So as each meeting goes, we report back on the progress that was made in different areas. Considering we have like a lot of involvement, we have working groups that meet separately outside of our main meetings and move things forward and brainstorm, and then they come and do a report back to keep everybody else up to speed. And then we follow up with what are the next steps and who is, taking what teams of people or individuals are undertaking those roles, so that there's accountability and a defined, everybody kind of has a task to achieve before the next one. So, yeah. And looking at this awesome visual here, helping to sort of divvy up the workload is really important, and utilizing different people's expertise so that they can take off their own chewable bite. So yeah, then planning for the next meeting, I guess, and the cycle keeps continuing. And as you move the project forward, so into stages of action. So our peatland project is still, we selected our solution in maybe it was December or November. And so the peatlands are still frozen. We're going to do all this work on the peatland, but we've really just been sort of priming everything, getting everything in place, bringing people to the table, learning about where our actions are going to be most effective. And a whole lot of the work we're going to do is going to occur in the summer months, and following at the end of our season, a big celebration event, which hopefully can be in person. And have it be an opportunity, whether that's your first time engaging in this or not. Like, you could come to this celebration as your first introduction, or you're there and you've collected data all summer, or you've contributed in this way. So I think it's going to be great to have something that we all sort of work up to, at which point we will decide whether we want to continue developing this project further, or start something new, or something totally different. So I hope that was helpful. Sorry if I went on a little bit long.
That's awesome.
Well, the things that resulted from our drawdown project in Soldotna, Kim has told you about the peatland project. We also began a cooperative solar buying campaign based on the Solarize model, which you might have heard about in Anchorage and Fairbanks, which has been pretty effective. We've had 82 households participate in that last year. It's underway this year, so we'll see what we have there. And we've also started a community composting project. We're calling Feed Chickens, Not Landfills. We're collecting waste and sending it not to the landfill, where it will break down into methane, which, as you all know, is a greenhouse gas worse than carbon dioxide. Instead, we're feeding it to livestock, so it can become manure and produce food, and eventually return to the soil as manure. Those are two things that we've come up with. They're projects that fit our community well, and the idea of this process is to find projects that fit your community too. Climate change, we're used to thinking of it as a global problem, but it's also a sort of cascade of local problems that arise from the global problem. And so the idea is this action kit is supposed to help you connect to your place and find a sort of change that we're calling middle out. It's not based on policy. It's not based on individual behavior. It's middle out. And these kind of projects, they might seem small scale, but we want these community and regional projects to really take root in their community. We think they'll be more durable that way. Their survival won't depend on who's in office or where like big chunks of funding come from. We want them to be durable. We want them to network, and we want them to scale. It's kind of what the action kit's about. Sort of distributing this idea and creating a coalition of people in Alaska, sort of all working in their own communities on their own communities' problems, and addressing the global problem that way. And we've sort of compiled a video about that, which we're going to show you here.
Yeah, I'll play it now, and then you can see how a middle out solution might happen in your area.
Hi, I'm Kagan Koski, a student from Alaska's Kenai Peninsula. My community is working to reverse climate change. In just the past year, we've brought solar power to tons of homes in our area and started neighborhood composting. To do this, we use the overlooked superpower of middle out change. Change can start from the bottom up with personal decisions like recycling, composting, and gardening at home. And change can start with big institutions, rewriting laws and policies from the top down. Often, we get hung up on these two areas of change. Individual actions sometimes feel too small, and top-down change sometimes takes too long. Our toolkit doesn't look at change from the top down or bottom up, but from a space too many people ignore, the middle out. Keep recycling, but look outside your home as well. Keep signing big petitions, but don't forget the power of your community. You have tremendous influence at the local level. Living where we live and being part of the community gives us all the power for meaningful climate action. Working together with our neighbors, let's unleash climate solutions from the middle out. To learn more and to download our action kit, please visit our website.
Thanks for watching. Oh, this is the time where we whip out your paper. So what could this work look like in your area? You know, it took us 7 months to have robust discussions and to land on our first solution. But as you think about what it could look like where you live, maybe in Cooper Landing or in Seward or in Fairbanks, I think the way that that helped us start this process was to think about our local assets and our local geography. So either on a piece of paper or in the chat, if you feel comfortable, please share a couple of strengths that you think your local area has. Maybe those strengths are other organizations or other people who are doing work in a climate related field. Maybe they're not climate activists, but they are doing great local food work or great transportation work. I'd love to see what some of the brainstorms are. And that's really what helped get us on the path of finding, you know, brainstorming solutions that would work in our local community. Oh, no. Sorry, I'll just get us out of this YouTube. But yeah, let's see if I'm seeing anything in the chat. Local science, thanks for the positive feedback. Yes, the nerdy fox is my favorite character too. Yeah, I think in Homer, like, right, the solution that is emerging from Homer is due to the fact that they have a strong contingent of amazing local scientists in the area. And up here in the Central Peninsula, we have a lot of burgeoning agriculture. And so the compost solution has a lot of community partners and players. And yeah, I'm very curious what your area's strengths are.
Local science, I think, is a particular strength of us here in Alaska. I don't know if there's been any specific research about this, but I think we probably have a higher number of scientists and engineers and ecologists, biologists, researchers in our communities per capita than most places in the world. So that's something that projects like this can really take advantage of.
Yeah, and let's kick it back to Taylor to close this out and open up some Q&A.
Thank you. Yeah, seeing some other strengths and nice things rolling into the chat. So feel free to keep dropping your ideas in there or writing them down on your pieces of paper for brainstorming. And before we transition to the panel, we wanted to, number one, just make sure that if you've registered for this webinar, that you are okay to be contacted through email with a follow-up email. We think creating community around this work is really important so that we can continue to inspire each other, to support each other, and share ideas. It's also a way to continue to problem solve just as different things come up in your communities. And so we'd love to follow up with an email and ask some more questions about what that community and conversation could look like. But outside of that email, we would love for you to just drop an answer in the chat. We're wondering if there's interest, capacity, and possibility for work like this to happen in your community. And you can just let us know yes or no how that feels after you've kind of seen the action kit and a little bit about what it is. And the recording, yes, so the recording will be shared in that follow-up email. So if folks weren't able to make it here today, we'll send out the recording so that they can get all this information, and we'll share all the good stuff with you in an email. And as you kind of continue to think through the possibility and capacity for work like this to happen in your community, you can drop those answers in the chat, but in an effort to stay within the hour that we've allotted, I'd like to turn it back over to our wonderful panelists for some Q&A. And if anybody has a question, they can drop that in the chat or go go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to ask your question.
Maybe we can stop our screen share so we can see each other. I know that, yeah, sometimes a discussion is a little bit more robust when we're looking at each other's faces. But yeah, I think that, yeah, this is just the time to ask questions about our process and the toolkit. We can talk a little bit about lessons learned, but if there's anything bubbling up first that anyone wants to sort of point us in a direction to talk about a specific aspect of our process, we'll go in that direction. Okay. I think we can definitely just kind of dive into things a little deeper. We brainstormed some questions to talk about, which is like what we could have done differently that might be good lessons learned for folks who are thinking about implementing this in your community. So I think actually I'll just pose that question to Kaitlin and Ben. What would you have done differently in Soldotna for your drawdown process?
Well, one thing that we kind of came up retrospectively that we put into the action kit is that the process is focused on projects rather than programs, and the distinction we drew there is a project is something that has a specific change it wants to accomplish in the world, and it does it, and then it moves on to the next project, whereas a program is something that kind of requires constant feeding and maintenance. It requires ongoing inputs of time and effort. And that's something we sort of came up with after the fact. A lot of the action kit might make it look like we sort of came up with a model and then did it and then wrote about it, but really it was kind of a mishmash, and it was sort of made up of sort of post hoc reasoning about what we did and how it worked. So that's something that's important to an important distinction, because some of our projects became programs, and they sort of ballooned into ongoing commitments. So having kind of not necessarily a start to finish plan of what you want to do, but an idea of an endpoint before you start is important.
Yeah, in our criteria, we didn't even consider projects that we wouldn't be able to make significant progress on or finish within a year. Those were just off the table. And that it was a really hard line to draw, because we see the big picture and we want to fix broken systems, which is a lifelong effort. But these middle out solutions are really meant to model the change that we want to ripple out. So these solutions that the guide really walks you through creating is all about doing something like putting solar panels on a public building, so that other people look at that change, that solution, which you could do in a year, and say, hey, well, why don't we do that? And so I think that's, but sticking to that throughout this process, when all of us want to have this big, huge change, it's actually an elegant and direct way to get to that big, huge change by implementing these smaller projects that are good examples of the change that we want. So.
Can I add to that a little bit too about because I think peatlands was one that was really difficult to frame as a project, and we didn't choose it as a project. So that was definitely what, overall, like the lesson I think is that when you refine your final decisions and you bring them up to a vote, have them have some parameters, they have the parameter built in. So like this is the 1 year goal related to this solution strategy. And if that takes an extra month or a team of people instead of an individual person, so you can really inform that, I think that would have been helpful for us. We had to reframe like our thinking to make land use issue fit within a 1 year time frame. And there are totally ways to do it. So for example, if you want to, protect peatlands, you could set a 1 year goal for like a land acquisition, or in our case, we're, collecting citizen science data. So having like a bench, you can engage in things that could be perpetual, but that have benchmarks that you try to achieve in 1 year. And then another thought on that with like the exit strategy is that it could be a really great idea to implement something that has a perpetual vision, but just like being aware of within 1 year, who and how is that going to continue to be maintained, and is there an avenue for that? So we're not sure right now, but I hope and I suspect that the Research Reserve will continue a citizen science peatland monitoring program, but that will shift to their management, and Drawdown may continue to be engaged, or we may refocus.
George asked a great question in the chat. Thanks, George. Can you talk about establishing guidelines early on? What seemed to energize participants the most? And I'd love to hear, the kickoff meeting really was all about that. It was about completely reframing people's idea of what we could do about this climate crisis. And so we spent a lot of time, we had a big, beautiful display of the Drawdown books. We invited people to look at it. We sent a lot of personal invitations to people from all sectors of our community saying, have you seen this? It's a completely new way to look at the climate change problem. And I think people, like we were saying, like, this busts myths. We've been told so long that this is what you need to do to fix the climate crisis. And, when you open up Drawdown, it just kind of really messes with your brain, because the solutions are like, well, actually, we need to address refrigeration management, local foods, which is something that we can all do. A very affordable solution has a huge impact. And so it's all this like, wow, I thought I had to buy an expensive electric car. And that does have a difference. But I think basically it just really restructured everybody's brains. And that is exciting. It was exciting and stimulating. And also the middle out as a framework was also exciting, because we've been sort of taught that as an individual, our efforts don't amount to much, or that you must do global or national policy change to have a big impact. And so I think that middle out framing also was really energizing, because then it's like, especially as Alaskans, right, we have this insane amount of leverage and power as individuals to like gather even just like one other person, like basically Ben and a few other volunteers last year, and then other volunteers this year, and then Satchel and Homer and now Yvonne. There's just a handful of people who got $1.5 million worth of solarized investment across the Kenai Peninsula last year. It doesn't have to be a huge group. Like, we can make huge change locally that ripples out and leads to the big change that we all want. And so I think those two things were insanely energizing. George, what do you think? I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that was one of the things I really enjoyed when I first looked at this, the action kit earlier this morning, was that from the middle out part, that because I've been working on the national stuff, but of course in my day-to-day life I do a lot of the individual things, and so yeah, seeing these things, and of course, Hawkins' book was so wonderful, because he was really focused on what needs to happen, which is that the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere needs to go down from where it is now. And that's, he starts with that premise and says, these are the kinds of solutions we need. And yeah, so those, yeah, just some of the things that I got from this. It's wonderful. Yeah, you guys, I can, you should be really proud of yourself. You've done a fantastic job.
We're really hopeful that it's useful to other communities. It was such a change, a huge shift for me in my work and for my community. We'd love to have continuing dialogue about how this action kit could be shared across Alaska, hopefully useful to groups of 2 or 100 people to start implementing local climate solutions in their area. I'm going to stop talking so that Taylor can maybe share a last couple words about how we move forward.
There was one other question that I'm wondering if one of the panelists might have some insight on. So Emily asked, how can you find if your community already has a climate action task force or climate action committee?
Well, we on our website we have a list of resources. It's not specifically, are we screen sharing? How do we?
Yeah, I can screen share.
Okay, we're gonna share the screen so we can show you our resources page on our website. It's not necessarily geared towards climate action coalitions, but this is a list that we've compiled of it's based around these different questions in different areas. You can click on them and they expand of different organizations around Alaska that are sort of good sources of expertise and analysis for how climate change is specifically impacting your area. These are research institutions, they're government agencies, they're nonprofits, they're academics who have done work on all these different issues. They're a good source of expert speakers, of project partners, and a few of them could be involved in local climate commissions or things of that nature. So this is a good place to start. Certainly not an end point for research, but a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are there other questions?
There was one more question that came in, and Lori is wondering, how was the Drawdown book received by public officials?
A few of them were very enthusiastic. You can probably imagine how this scenario went in your head. There were sort of indifferent ones, and a small handful of hostile ones, and a small handful of enthusiastic ones. It did make an impact on the way our local officials thought. The city of Soldotna is participating in a what are they called? A climate cohort of cities that are being organized by UAA, and we actually succeeded in getting a borough level a conservation commission going, and whether that can be attributed to our officials reading Drawdown or not is questionable, but we've definitely sort of moved things on the local policy level.
I think it shifts it from a perception that climate change is something that you can't do anything about to, like, there's some really good climate change solutions that also are good for the economy, good for public health, good for our communities. And so it allows people to come to the table to do these solutions regardless of what really brings them there. And it's just a game changer in all ways. Like you said, George, it's such a great reframing of this opportunity that we have to build better societies, better world. So, Earth Day, let's get some good stuff done.
Yeah, it's
Great.
also that it's so credible. Like, there are these numbers and these crunch, and a lot of people think in that framework and have a hard time engaging with like environmental movements that are a little too, you know, abstract or emotional based, and they want to see like the numbers. And so I think it's really effective for reaching people in that way too.
Great. Well, we are just past our 1 o'clock mark. So in the interest of respecting everybody's time, I think we could keep this conversation going for a whole lot longer, but we will follow up with an email to talk about what would be the best fit to keep this conversation and community going, and how to stay in touch with each other and continue problem solving. So keep an eye out for a follow-up email. We'll have a Google form in there to get some more feedback about how you'd like to keep in touch. And we'll share the recording as well so that you can send that out to anyone you know who wasn't able to be here today, but might benefit from seeing this information. So just want to say thank you all to our panelists and everyone who was here today to participate. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us to celebrate Earth Day in this way.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that we get the recording up so that if there's anyone that you think would really enjoy watching this, that you could share it. Yeah, and I guess my personal ask too is on Earth Day, give someone that you love the gift of the link to the action kit.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Yeah, thanks for all your work.
Thank you for your feedback.
Thanks for sharing so freely.
Yeah, thanks for all the work that you do. We're inspired by you.
Thanks.
Yeah, this was fantastic. You guys take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
George.
You guys
Thank you
rock.
for being here.
Happy Earth Day.
Yeah, stay in touch. Let us know if you get something started. Yeah, we want to hear about it.
All
You
right.
bet.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
And you know, it would be great. Maybe for May, if someone from Cook Inlet would want to be a guest speaker at our next monthly meeting, that would be fantastic.
We would be honored. Yeah.
So we'll stay in touch.
Great.
Adios.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for facilitating, Taylor.
Thank you, everyone. I saved the chat, so we have that.
Well, I hit the recording like right after you had said welcome because I'm a dork, but I
That's
think-
okay. Thank you for catching that. It completely slipped my mind.
And we
That's true. I thought we had like an hour and a half. So I'm sorry if I talked for too long.
No, that's great. Yeah, I think we scheduled an hour and a half just in case.
No, that was good. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Great. All right.
alrighty.
Back to work.
It's one of those things like, do you know you like cast a little like, you know, a little stone into